With Admiral Alexander Marcus's successful launch of the USS Enterprise and the redesigned Constitution class, he began to set his sights even further to the future, for a starship class that would outperform the Constitution class at every turn, and ensure the protection of Starfleet and the United Federation of Planets. And this class would be named the Vengeance Class. Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon, a Star Trek web series that dives into the history of any given topic using beta canon sources and my own imagination to fill in the gaps. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the early design history for the Vengeance Class Dreadnought, to better understand its place in Star Trek history. Please note, this video is an update to an earlier one I made before I had access to such great 3D models. So I thought I'd redo this one and give you good trinaries the video you deserve. But please keep in mind, this video takes place in the Kelvin universe, and as such, characters and events in that universe will be different. Also, I'd like to give a huge shout out to Mark Bell for the awesome model of the USS Vengeance, as well as to Alex3D for the sneak peek of a model I'll be using in a future video. Links to both these amazing 3D modelers' websites are in the description below. As always, because this is just a beta canon video, all information relayed should pretty much be taken with a grain of stardust, and only considered a little bit of Star Trek fun. And so, with all that out of the way, let's begin. The redesigned Constitution class was a complete success. Even before its shakedown cruise, the amazing class of Starfleet starships had saved Earth from destruction by an advanced Romulan starship from the future, and Admiral Marcus could not be happier. This success meant that Admiral Marcus now had the complete support of Starfleet Command to continue his experiments and developments in starship designs and technologies to protect the Federation. With this support, Admiral Marcus began to look at potential threats for the future surrounding Federation space, and came to the conclusion that there was only one species that posed any risk to Starfleet, and that was the Klingon Empire. In 2256, 2 years prior to the Enterprise's launch, the USS Shenzhou, under the command of Captain Philippa Georgiou, had been confronted and subsequently attacked by a large force of Klingon starships. Sending their own fleet of starships in to repel the Empire's attack, Starfleet's forces would be victorious, thanks to the upgrades and technologies that had been included in these starships from Starfleet's efforts to reverse engineer the technologies of the Narada. Though Starfleet did suffer major losses, including that of the USS Europa and Fleet Admiral Brett Anderson. But even with these losses, the Klingon forces had been beaten back, and Captain Georgiou would receive a commendation and a promotion to the rank of Admiral, assuming the position of Head of Fleet Operations, the post formerly held by Admiral Anderson. Though the Klingon Empire had been quiet on all fronts since the battle at the Binary Stars, Marcus believed that they would be back, and was determined to ensure the Federation fleet was ready for this inevitable outcome. And as a result, he would speed up refit and construction of all Starfleet starships, and send out several Starfleet vessels on specialized missions with specialized officers to seek out and acquire any and all defensive and offensive technologies to help the Federation. Using his newfound status within the Federation, Marcus would also cancel several scientific projects that he felt were unnecessary and divert those resources to his cause. One of these projects, a new form of space travel using what its scientists were calling the Spore Drive, was put on hold indefinitely, and the 3 starships constructed of that class, the USS Crossfield, the USS Discovery, and the USS Glenn, were sent to remote, unexplored areas of space with the aforementioned mission to seek out new technologies. While on one of these missions, the USS Discovery, under the command of Captain Gabriel Lorca, came across a derelict starship containing sleeper pods from the year 1996. Aboard this ship in one of the pods was Khan Noonien Singh, one of the genetically engineered tyrants of the eugenics wars of the 1990s. Seeing an opportunity to utilize Khan as an expert tactician, given his genetically engineered brain, Marcus ordered the pods along with the Super Khan return to a secret facility in orbit around Io, one of Jupiter's moons. Once there, Marcus would convince the now revived Khan to assist him and Starfleet, promising the resurrection of his genetically engineered crew as payment once Operation Vengeance, the codename Admiral Marcus had given to the entire project of defending against Klingon aggression, was complete. To allow Khan to work with Marcus's teams without question, he would even go so far as to physically alter Khan's entire look, and giving him a new name and identity, that of John Harrison. At the Io facility, Marcus was developing an even more advanced and impressive starship he named after the project, the USS Vengeance. He had been very close friends with Admiral Brett Anderson, and when his friend was killed at the Battle of the Binary Stars, Marcus felt the name Vengeance would fit his plans for the Klingon Empire perfectly. Having Khan design the starship, he felt would give this new massive vessel the edge it needed to bring the Klingon Empire to its knees. Khan, for his part, would implement several technological developments, which would see the USS Vengeance become one of the most amazing dreadnoughts ever designed in Starfleet history. One of the biggest projects implemented by Khan involved the almost total automation of the starship itself. Khan felt Starfleet's current starship designs, though remarkable, simply required too many officers and crew to operate them. He realized that during war times, crew would be at a premium, and he saw this as a flaw in Starfleet's designs. The problem was, though, no starship computer core currently in service had the ability to handle the automation required to allow for a very small crew to operate a starship. Reviewing reports on the breakthroughs in the Narada tech, Khan was impressed by the 21-year-old who had practically cracked the entire case wide open, Dr. Richard Daystrom. Setting up a meeting with the genius, Khan presented the computer problem to Daystrom and asked if he could solve that problem. Richard Daystrom, who had created the Daystrom Institute with Marcus's blessing after his solid work on the Narada program, simply stated that he believed he already had. Daystrom had been working on a brand new computer core and operating system he coined M1. Using Duotronic components mixed with Narada tech, Daystrom believed he had finally made an immense breakthrough in computer technology. By utilizing his own brain scans, then imprinting them onto the core, Daystrom had basically created a living computer, one which would allow a starship a minimal crew to operate it, as the new core itself could virtually run all the systems aboard any starship. Reporting this all back to Admiral Marcus, Khan was immediately given the approval to have Daystrom construct and install the new computer core aboard the USS Vengeance. Khan also saw another potential advantage that Starfleet could utilize. With the breakthrough in transwarp technology, as well as standard warp technologies at the time, it was practically impossible to attack a starship while it was at warp. This was because each vessel, while at warp, essentially created its own bubble or pocket universe which it would travel in, allowing for the great speeds needed to traverse space. To attack a starship while at warp velocities required very extensive calculations to achieve, as a starship would have to match the course of a vessel exactly, then increase velocity to a point which would allow the starship to overtake but not overshoot the vessel. Then the starship would have to enter the warp field of the enemy starship, which meant matching the exact frequency that enemy starship's warp fields were operating on, while simultaneously ensuring exact power levels to not collapse your own warp field bubble, sending your own starship careening back into normal space at such velocities that the starship itself would most likely end up destroyed or severely damaged. But given Daystrom's new M1 computer core, Khan wondered if the possibility might exist to allow a starship to finally attack an enemy vessel while at warp. Again approaching Daystrom with this problem, Daystrom would simply raise an eyebrow to Khan and tell the genetically engineered Superman that he loved a challenge, and set one of his best teams the problem of making Khan's wish a reality. With construction on the USS Vengeance completed by early 2259, Khan approached Admiral Marcus to fulfill his end of their bargain, but Marcus refused. Alexander Marcus had never had any intention of allowing Khan or any of his followers free roam within the galaxy, and seeing the potential of the genetically engineered superhumans, as Khan himself had demonstrated on Project Vengeance, Marcus decided that it was time to end the partnership and have Khan terminated. Placing Khan under arrest, it was Marcus's intent to have it appear as though John Harrison had been killed in an unfortunate accident. Then he would revive another of Khan's crew and go through the entire procedure again, placing them in charge of another project. But Admiral Marcus made a huge mistake. During that meeting with Khan, Marcus, perhaps believing that it would make Khan more controllable, proclaimed to Khan that he had killed all of Khan's remaining followers. And then, using a surprise attack, Khan was believed to be rendered unconscious, and then dragged off for his horrible accident. It is unclear whether Khan himself was actually unconscious at all, but shortly thereafter, while en route to an engineering lab, Khan effected an escape in one of the base's shuttles, seeking his own revenge on Marcus and Starfleet Command. It was only after Khan enacted his plan for revenge later in 2259 that the true depth of Admiral Marcus's deceit and mental instability was revealed, and the USS Enterprise would be forced to battle the starship and would eventually win against the USS Vengeance, recapturing Khan, while the USS Vengeance and Admiral Marcus would be lost in the attempt. Admiral Philippa Georgiou, promoted to Marcus's previously held position and shocked by what had transpired right under Starfleet Command's noses, would put an end to Project Vengeance, sealing the starship's design in Starfleet's Command highly classified archives, never to see the light of day again. Although an uncomfortable end to the Vengeance Class Dreadnought, no one can deny the impact this starship had on Starfleet's best scientists. It proved that once pushed, the Federation's best and brightest could solve virtually any problem, creating a starship design the likes of which no one had ever seen before. Thank you for watching today's episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon. Did you enjoy the story I created here to explain the Vengeance Class Dreadnought? Would you like to hear more stories like this one? Well, leave your comments in the section below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel automate its own computer systems? Then consider becoming a channel patron. The link to our Patreon account is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Live long and prosper.